Ich glaube, ich habe da einen großen Fehler gemacht, dass ich da was gekauft habe. Ich glaube, das war keine gute Entscheidung. Ich weiß ja nicht, was drin ist, weil ich es wahrscheinlich nie aufmachen werde, aber ich hoffe, da ist wirklich eine CD drin. Und kein Download-Code, das wäre ja... So, Freunde, wir schauen die Wahrheit über Limited Run Games. Wer nicht weiß, was Limited Run Games ist, das ist so eine... Ja, die stellen irgendwie immer so Spiele her, so... in kleiner Stückzahl, so wie zu Jurassic Park, wo ich auch zugeschlagen habe, aber das weiß ich gar nicht, wann das kommt. Und naja, dieses Video geht eine ganze Stunde. Es ist in Englisch, das wusste ich gar nicht, weil die Überschrift, die Wahrheit über Limited Run Games, ist auf Deutsch. Deswegen war ich ein bisschen verwundert. Aber lasst uns einfach mal reingehen und gucken. Wie gesagt, das geht eine ganze Stunde. Und lassen wir uns mal überraschen, was dabei rumkommt. Let's go. Ich habe deutsche Untertitel angemacht. Ich weiß nicht, ob die immer richtig übersetzt werden. Aber es ist halt, falls jemand das Video mal auf YouTube sehen sollte, dann ist das natürlich eine Erleichterung, ne? Wenn man das ein oder andere nicht verstehen sollte. So, let's go.
Games is not a very good company. I'm sure that's inflammatory, but I do have this whole video here that I'm going to use to try to explain it. It's not any one thing. It's a lot of things. I've never really
Bin mal gespannt, warum die keine gute Firma sind. Also ich habe noch nichts Negatives gehört, aber wir gucken mal, ne?
put much thought into this company, and I suspect most people haven't either. It's a thing that exists on the internet, selling stuff that I don't really buy, and that's about all it is, or at least all it was until Tommy Tallarico decided to unveil the Intellivision Amico at the Crayola event in Pennsylvania.
Crayola Event, keine Ahnung, was das
It
sein soll.
was, by all accounts, quite a spectacle, and Ars Technica wrote an article that was fair but extremely critical. Tommy didn't respond well. Tommy Tallarico has a habit of not responding well, calling people all sorts of things and none of them very nice. He has a real PR problem, and he has for a while. In this case, a couple of games industry people started tweeting about him, tweeting about this article.
Habt ihr das schon mal gehört von diesem Amico? Ich weiß gar nicht, was das sein soll.
Calling the Amico vaporware and calling out Tallarico's heavily politicized Twitter account. Tommy responded by calling one of them an untalented, jealous gatekeeping, which briefly showed up as trending in the video games category on Twitter, and I saw it. A few weeks prior, I had told my friend, the Golden Bolt, about the Amico event and suggested he might want to go, which, of course...
Wisst ihr, was wir mal machen? Wir stellen mal die Geschwindigkeit ein bisschen hoch, weil der redet so langsam. Dann sind wir da ein bisschen schneller durch. So.
He did not want to go. This tweet led us to start
Geht, oder?
talking about the Amico event and how the Amico has one interesting thing. All games have to be complete. No patches, no updates, no DLC. This sounds really interesting from a game preservation standpoint. After all, when the Amico inevitably fails, there's a real shot that these games that are on it could be saved in playable states. Then, Bolt said to me, all game preservationists are scammers at the end of the day. This was somewhat of a shocking revelation because I'd always thought that people really liked limited run. I was very quickly disabused of this notion, but I left the conversation intent on...
Also die haben verschiedene IPs da drin, ne? Also verschiedene Spiele. Wie zum Beispiel, was habe ich letztens gesehen? Stranger Things haben die drin gehabt. Dann, wie gesagt, Jurassic Park und. Ich denke mal, wir werden gleich noch ein paar zu sehen bekommen.
exploring some of the issues people have with LRG. LRG is a company that
The Mummy Remastered war da gerade.
makes physical copies of games, and it's not a small business. Their release of Scott Pilgrim.
Und das ist das Gute daran, ne, dass sie diese physischen Versionen davon haben. Allein die Veröffentlichung von Scott Pilgrim hat in den ersten 3 Stunden mindestens $875.000 eingenommen. Also, ne, oder? Was sagt er jetzt? Mal gucken.
alone sold at least $875,000 in the first 3 hours. And
Okay, also so viel Kohle haben die damit gemacht.
probably a lot more considering the KO edition, the collector
Das sieht ja aber auch geil aus, ne? Ich meine, das ist zum Beispiel für Sammler und für Sammlerkollegen, ist das halt natürlich richtig geil, ne?
edition was $105 more than the regular edition, and it sold out too. Plus, there was a PS4 edition that we don't know the sales numbers for. So, needless to say, this is a company that made millions of dollars in a single day. It's not a mom and pop shop doing a couple $100 a month. I went into this thinking that the biggest problem with LRG is the fact that their games are limited. If you want a physical
Ja, deswegen heißen sie auch Limited Run Games.
version of a game that came out a while back, the worst possible thing is to find out that LRG published it, because that means the only way you're
Guck mal, das ist halt auch geil gemacht, ne? Da kannst du halt nichts sagen, wenn du ein Sammler bist. Wenn du diese Edition siehst, ne?
getting it
Die gibt's ja auch so dann gar nicht, ne? Das ist halt einfach geil gemacht. Die Frage ist halt, ist das Spiel auch so geil am Ende?
is to pay at least double its value on eBay. And then I started
Ja, das ist halt auch noch so ein Ding, ne? Dass das immer bei eBay fürs Doppelte verkauft wird.
researching.
Aber ich habe da auch richtig Geld investiert bei Jurassic Park. Ich habe jetzt nicht die Collectors Edition bestellt, weil die war richtig teuer, sondern noch eine andere. Aber ja, mal gucken. Und die soll übrigens auch zu VGA gehen, irgendwann mal. Mal gucken.
One of the more interesting
Weil das kannst du jetzt schon kaufen, ne? Digital gibt's das schon, aber die physische Version, ich weiß auch nicht, wie das funktioniert. Also die nehmen die Kohle ein, dann dauert das irgendwie 100 Jahre. Das ist ja auch schon 3 Monate her oder so. Ich kann ja mal gucken.
chapters in Limited Run's life is a game called Revenge of the Bird King. You've probably never heard of this game, or if you have heard of it, you might be confused. See, Bird King is probably best known as that Switch game you bought for a penny one time, because it's a $5 indie game that has essentially never not been on sale. 9 cents, 1 cent, 40 cents. The price of this game is rarely over $1.
So, 1.9.2023. Da habe ich das bestellt. Ich habe bestellt. Ach nee, die Collection Classic Edition. Was ist denn das für eins? Also die Classic Game Collection und die Classic Collection Classic Edition. Was? Also die hier habe ich bestellt. Gibt's die? Nee. Die hier. Die habe ich bestellt. Und was ist denn alles drin? Warte mal, da ist noch ein Bild dabei. Ja, da hast du halt wie so eine Videokassette ist dabei, ne? Sieht man das hier? Egal.
This fits pretty well, though, considering it's an incredibly poorly reviewed indie
Aber das ist das Einzige, was ich bis jetzt zwar bestellt habe. Es gab natürlich noch andere coole Sachen, aber kannst halt nicht alles haben, weil es ist halt schweineteuer.
game described with such words as forgettable, glitchy, and an annoying experience for sure. I'm sure that had it merely been, well, that, we'd be taking that first description of forgettable to its inevitable conclusion of forgotten, but there's a couple of snags. First, the background. This game was released on Switch and PS Vita digitally and was intended to be released
PS Vita?
on PS4 digitally as well. It was created by Joe, an LRG employee and developer, and then its digital PS4 release was canceled. That could have been the end of the story, except
Das hat
somehow
irgendein Mitarbeiter da hergestellt, oder was? Das ist so ein billig Platin-Spiel, oder wie?
in some way, Joe had personally commissioned a limited physical run of Bird King, and this limited physical run was now somehow being sold. There are quite a few distinct parts to this. First, why was the game pulled from digital?
Also ich muss sagen, wenn ich so ein Spiel sehe, dann ist das eher nichts für mich, aber so Jurassic Park, das Spiel kommt ja aus den 90ern, ne? Und ich habe das, glaube ich, auch damals gespielt, aber ich weiß nicht mehr genau, auf welcher Konsole das
Release. Well, according to
war. Das auf dem Super Nintendo, N64, keine
Joe,
Ahnung.
the physical edition was funded by an unnamed third-party investor who had gotten the physical edition printed for a, quote, stupid, silly promo release for an event that has since been canceled. Since the event was canceled, the digital release of the game was also canceled. Why this matters is that Sony doesn't allow you to sell physical editions of games that aren't available on the PlayStation Store. They want every game you can buy physically to also be available digitally. That's just the way it is. That means that when the digital edition was canceled, the physical edition could no longer be sold. That's part one. Part two is that Metal Jesus Rocks did a video on this
Metal Jesus Rocks.
physical edition, wherein he suggests that
Das Ding ist, wenn du so eine Version hast als physische Version und die ist original verpackt, dann kannst du da richtig Kohle rausschlagen, ne?
this might be the rarest physical edition release ever.
Ja, die seltenste bla bla überhaupt, ne?
He explains that he got 2 copies from Joe, but that there's essentially no other copies available because of the fact that the game just can't be
Und hier, original verpackt.
sold. He
Das sind halt irgendwelche Schrottspiele, aber die sind halt so selten, dass die dann so teuer
talks
sind.
it up, really lays it on thick, and then
nicht aufmachen.
tells people they can send a DM to Joe on Twitter, and maybe he'll sell them one too. Next thing you know, LRG tweets that their employee had put up an elusive copy
Employee ist ein Mitarbeiter, ne? Heißt das?
of the game on eBay as a one-time physical sale, with the benefits of the sale profiting the Video Game History Foundation. And then LRG holds a pop-up sales event in North Carolina, and who should be selling there but Joe and his box of Bird King physical copies. That's right, if you drive to North Carolina, you too could buy a physical copy of the game directly from Joe at the Limited Run Games event for only $30 a pop, or both variations.
Ich weiß nicht, wer genau das Video gemacht hat. Ich kenne den nicht. Das ist von Mr. mrixrt. Also, ich weiß nicht, ob er jetzt ein Spezialist für Videospiele ist oder so. Es kann natürlich sein. Wie viele Abos hat er denn? Ja, 27.000, ne? So.
Of the cover, which is reversible,
weil die Leute kaufen das ja, die Leute kaufen das Spiel ja meistens nicht zum Spielen, ne?
$30 twice. When people
Sondern das ist eher so ein Sammelding.
picked this up, they noticed that the back of the box didn't look like the early leaks of the box art. That box art had clearly shown that the physical copy was intended to be Limited Run Games number 000. Boy, releasing an employee's random game as number 000 at a pop-up event sure would have been a stupid, silly promo. Of course, LRG was quick to mention that they didn't have anything to do with this physical release at all. Joe is just an employee, and he's free to pursue his personal hobbies. Of course, LRG is the publisher of the PS Vita version and the Switch version, and their website is listed on the physical version as the publisher, and they filed for the ESRB rating for a physical release. And they had an event they were hosting where it would make sense to release a 00.
Event, Alter. Guck mal, ist alles voll mit diesen Spielen. Würdet ihr da ein Spiel holen? Ich denke mal, viele Sammler würden hier komplett alles leer
Zero game is an end cap already planned.
Nur damit sie es teurer weiterverkaufen können.
Let's recap. An LRG employee makes a seemingly unlicensed physical edition of a game that LRG didn't publish, but which was published by them on every other console.
Das sind aber diese Billigspiele, Alter. Also diese sind von Ratalaika, die kriegst du ja ohne Ende. Das sind im Übrigen diese Spiele, die ich nicht mehr spielen möchte.
From digital release after an unnamed third-party investor pulled their support, which was intended to complement an in-person event with a funny physical release. This employee then gives 2 copies to Metal Jesus Rocks, who is friends with LRG, and who makes a video calling it the rarest PS4 game of all time, and then LRG promotes an eBay auction for the game with proceeds benefiting Metal Jesus Rocks' former collaborator. Then, a few weeks later, they sell a bunch of the physical editions at an LRG physical pop-up sales event, which sure sounds like a funny in-person event to release the rumored 000 at. I mean, look, you can come to whatever conclusion you want from this, but if nothing else, this is incredibly incestuous, opaque, and dubious. The biggest reason behind limited run games.
Kann man so sehen, ne, dass das alles so ein bisschen hochgepusht wird. Ich glaube, am Ende ist das Fazit von diesem Video, dass Limited Game Runs sehr viel Kohle macht mit irgendeinem Schrott.
To be preservation. They say they're trying to preserve video games in a physical state so that when, say, Nintendo shuts down the Switch eShop, it's going to happen one day, you will still be able to play some Switch games that weren't AAA enough to be released on a cartridge. Unfortunately, LRG does a lot of stuff that doesn't really fit into that preservation mindset. Here's a couple of examples in no particular order. LRG put out a No More Heroes Collector's Edition for $79.99, and it included the original soundtrack. However, after release, it was discovered that it actually included all the original soundtrack except for one song, Philistine.
Ein Song hat gefehlt.
From the second game. Sam & Max Save the World's release was a remastered version that had some jokes removed, and after discovery, LRG said, "Y'all realize how many jokes are in Sam & Max, right? Complaining about 4 or 5 jokes being changed in a game that has literally thousands of jokes is a whole new level. Cosmic Star Heroine requires a downloaded patch before it can even be
Oha, da muss man ein Patch runterladen, bevor man spielen kann.
played." Scott Pilgrim, one of the
Das ist natürlich blöd, ne?
largest launches that LRG ever did, doesn't have the Ubisoft DLC characters. LRG delayed Celeste by 6+ months to get the DLC on the cartridge. They specifically pledged to preserve all parts of a game, except for Scott Pilgrim, apparently. None of this is particularly surprising if you look at why LRG exists. They were originally formed to sell their own games from Mighty Rabbit Studios. Limited Run 001 is their game, Breach and Clear. They're not a game preservation company. They're a game seller, first and foremost. And this was their attempt at not going.
Also man kann das so sehen, ne? Wenn du jetzt Sammler bist und diese Spiele nicht spielen willst, dann ist dir, glaube ich, auch scheißegal, was da drauf ist. Du sagst einfach, Junge, das Spiel ist so selten, ich habe das jetzt hier in der Box original verpackt, bla, kriegt noch einen Grading-Stempel drauf und Abfahrt, ne? Ja, so ist es halt.
Bankrupt.
Und alle anderen packen das halt aus und spielen das und regen sich dann darauf auf, dass da irgendwas fehlt.
After their games failed to sell. There's a lot of other companies, such as Strictly Limited, Super Rare, Special Reserve, and I Am 8-Bit, but Limited Run is the only one that actually wasn't started to preserve games. Having physical copies that are missing content, have been retroactively changed, require a patch download, or are missing DLC means that you've preserved nothing. All the physical copy has done is give you less of a download for what is ultimately a pretty box for a digital version. Ultimately, the reason why people buy from Limited Run has little to do with the games themselves. Sure, there's a subset of customers
Jetzt kommt wahrscheinlich eine Untergruppe von
who want to
Kunden,
buy some
die ein bestimmtes Spiel kaufen wollen, das er rausbringt.
specific game that LRG puts out, and there's another smaller subset that just wants to support game preservation. But the largest group of buyers amongst LRG's customers is collectors. And
Sammler, genau, jetzt kommen wir an den Punkt, wo es halt um die Sammler geht und deswegen machen die das halt und damit machen die halt Kohle.
of course it is. I don't even think that's a surprising statement because who else would buy these? In every case, these are games that already exist in other forms, usually a lot cheaper and certainly a lot sooner. Why wait a year to play a game that costs 4 or 5 times as much? Collectors. Limited Run feeds on
Ja, es geht nur um Sammler bei dem Ding. Also warum sollte ich mir denn Jurassic Park holen? Was es damals auf dem Super Nintendo oder keine Ahnung auf welcher Konsole gab. Ne? Wann ist Jurassic Park rausgekommen? 94? Super Nintendo, ja, N64, wann kam das raus? 2 Jahre, 3 Jahre später?
off FOMO and obsession. That's
Kenne mich nicht so gut aus mit den Daten, aber ich hatte alle. Ich hatte sie alle.
fear of missing out, if you somehow hadn't heard that term before. And it's the same psychological trigger that drives people to panic buy toilet paper or milk. And it's used absolutely
Toilet Paper.
everywhere. Amazon uses it, car manufacturers use it. Black Friday is the literal incarnation of FOMO marketing. This stuff is everywhere, and it works. It works really well. But that doesn't mean it can't be incredibly predatory. Let me take
Night Trap.
a second here to clarify that I don't fault LRG for creating exclusive closed runs of games. I know there's a lot of people who are mad at the very concept of limited or exclusive printings, but that's not my concern here. Instead, my issue is with how they limit the products, how they artificially deflate the numbers, and how they release products piecemeal to exploitatively squeeze extra dollars per purchase. I think that last one is the easiest to grasp, so here's a couple of examples. LRG made a Jay and Silent Bob Mall Brawl NES
Jay and Silent Bob, Alter. Ich wusste gar nicht, dass es ein Jay and Silent Bob Film sei schon, gab's. Ein Spiel gab, Alter. What the hell?
cartridge, an admittedly pretty neat little toy if you're a fan of this game. A retro 8-bit side-scrolling brawler with couch co-op is exactly the kind of game that a limited edition NES port makes perfect sense for. It's the kind of product you actually want one of these super limited versions for. Yeah, you could buy it on Steam for $15, but with this collectible, you can play it on an NES. Super neat.
Würde ich auch nicht auspacken, ne? Das ist genau das Thema, was ich gemeint habe. wenn du so ein Spiel bekommst. Jay und Silent Bob, die kennt man einfach. Mit denen ist man aufgewachsen, ja. Das sind halt, ja, weiß ich auch nicht, die kennt man einfach. Wer kennt die denn nicht? Irgendwelche 25-Jährigen heutzutage, die kennen die nicht.
But LRG couldn't stop.
Aber wer kennt denn Jay und Silent Bob nicht, Alter?
There, no. They made 3 versions of the cartridge in 3 different colors of plastic.
Ja, und die musst du natürlich alle haben als Sammler.
Gray, yellow, and green, and sold all 3 separately and as a zero-discount bundle in order to hit those receptors in your brain that say you're missing out if you don't buy the same.
Ganz wichtig ist es für Leute, die wirklich. Wollen wir mal gucken, was das kostet auf eBay? Ich gehe mal kurz auf eBay, Freunde. Ich gehe mal kurz gucken. Jay and Silent Bob Limited Game Runs. Warum soll ich mich denn einloggen? Wie will ich mich einloggen hier? Jay and Silent Bob Limited Run Games. Ich sag das immer andersrum. So. Lass mal gucken hier. Eine PS4-Version gibt's davon auch noch. Alter, ich raste aus, Alter. Das gibt's doch nicht. Neu sealed. Jay and Silent Bob Premium Edition NES limitierte Auflage neu versiegelt. Welche Version ist das? Ich kann euch schon mal den Preis sagen. 170 € aus Großbritannien. Das ist die. Weiß ich nicht. Kann ich nicht sehen. Könnte die goldene. Gab es eine goldene Version? Könnte die goldene Version sein. Hä? Ist da die Cartridge dabei? Oder wo ist das hier? Sehe ich gar nicht. Hä? Doch, ach, das ist die graue Version. Der Originalpreis war 85 $. Und der will hier haben 168 €. Wisst ihr Bescheid, ne? Das ist ein Invest. Ich mache mir mal kurz hier ein Herz ran.
Same game 3 times. Blaster Master Zero 3 was a big release on limited run, and they also decided to do Blaster Master Zero 1 and 2 alongside it. However, rather than make 1 and 2 a single product, they make them 2 separate games. Now, this is only an issue for hardcore collectors. However, that's essentially LRG's entire user base. This is only made even worse when they decide to sell another artwork variation through Best Buy, or hold back unknown amounts of stock to sell on Fangamer well after the original sales period, or keep some mysterious percentage of stock available for in-person events. The argument here is usually some variation of, well, you don't have to buy them, or at least they're making physical versions.
Es gibt auch noch hier für 108 € gibt es auch noch dieses Limited-Ding. Ich weiß aber nicht, ob das gleiche ist. Bin hier mal ein bisschen am Durchscrollen nebenbei. Jetzt hat er mich natürlich angefixt mit diesem Jay and Silent Bob. Ich finde die einfach. Das ist einfach Legende, Alter. Das ist einfach Legende, Bruder. Und das auch hier mit dem Super Mario-Ding, das habe ich mir damals geholt, aber zum Spielen. Da war ich noch nicht so in diesem original verpackt Game drin. Beziehungsweise war ich schon lange drin, weil ich meine PS3-Spiele damals nicht ausgepackt habe. Immer nur gekauft und nicht ausgepackt. Man kennt's. Und das habe ich mir auch geholt. Und es gibt Leute, die haben sich davon stapelweise geholt. Ne? Weil das war auch limitiert, das Spiel, angeblich. Aber ich glaube, das kriegst du immer noch im Laden, wenn du es spielen möchtest. Und es gibt das natürlich auch digital.
I want to play. Let's respond to those separately. First, if your only reasoning for why something predatory is okay is because
Und ich bin noch nicht dazu gekommen, das wirklich durchzuspielen. Ich habe es einfach noch nicht geschafft, Alter. Ich wollte eigentlich Mario 64 spielen. Nicht geschafft.
It allows you to get what you want.
Ich habe einfach keine Zeit mehr dafür. Keine Ahnung, irgendwie ist die Zeit weg.
That's pretty disingenuous, and I think you know why. Or maybe you don't, but that's even worse. Secondly, the problem with predatory practices is not that everyone falls for them. It's that some people fall for them really, really hard. There's a reason why mobile games are free, yet still make billions of dollars, and it's not because they can just not play them. I would bet dollars to donuts that just like any gacha game, most of the revenue from LRG comes from what in any other world would be called whales. When your primary customer base is people literally obsessed and over-invested buying everything you have without question, well, that's not exactly a wholesome approach, is it? The fact is that if LRG were about preservation instead of just pure profit off the backs of the obsessed, they wouldn't exploit their own customers with systems like this. I'm not even delving into the warped concept of a collector's edition of their limited games, a limited run of a limited run designed.
Ich glaube, ich würde mir niemals ein Limited Run Spiel holen, um es zu spielen.
And exclusively to
Würde ich, glaube ich, nicht machen. Das ist eher so ein Sammlerding, ne?
extract more cash from.
Das wäre mir zu schade zum Auspacken. Da würde ich dann die digitale Version holen. Ich glaube, die kosten ein Viertel oder ein Fünftel.
Those collector-minded customers. Now, not only are they hooking into your.
Wir können ja mal gucken, was das Jurassic Park kostet. Alter, ich stopp hier so oft, ne? Aber wir gucken jetzt einfach mal. Jurassic. Es kommt bald ein neues Jurassic Park raus, Freunde. Jurassic Park. Hier ist es. 30 Euro kostet die. PS4 und PS5-Version ist getrennt. Die Schweine, Alter. Die Schweine. Ich hab gedacht, das ist zusammen. Naja gut, dann entscheidet man sich halt für die PS5-Version, ne? Was ist denn da alles drin? Freunde? Es gibt, Standardversion, 2 verschiedene. Achso, PS4, PS5. Jurassic Park, 8-Bit. Jurassic Park Portable, 16-Bit, Genesis, also Mega Drive. Jurassic Park 2, The Chaos Continues, 16-Bit, dann Portable. Und Jurassic Park Rampage Edition Genesis. Und alles in einer Edition.
Need to collect them all, they're insidiously digging deeper with a limited edition of a game that's already supposed.
Meint ihr, Jay and Silent Bob gibt es auch im Store? Jay and Silent Bob. Ich meine, das ist Jay and Silent. Müsste es eigentlich, ne? Ja, Mann, das gibt's ja wirklich, Alter, ich raste aus. Das kann doch nicht wahr sein. Wieso habe ich denn das nicht gesehen? Okay. Ich mach mal auf meine Wunschliste.
Limited.
Vielleicht ist es ja mal im Angebot.
If you're a big fan of retro Sega games, you're probably really enjoying the renaissance of Sega mini consoles. The Genesis Mini came out for $80 and it was fantastic. 42 games that people really wanted, a smart UI, good quality, and easy to use. The game.
Ich habe mir damals zum Beispiel, kleine Geschichte, diese, wie heißt denn das? Das war auch so ein. Ich habe mir damals diese Sega Mega Drive Edition geholt für die PlayStation 3 und habe das auch platiniert, weil das Platin war jetzt nicht so schwer. Und das fand ich auch geil, ne, dass es da sowas gibt irgendwie. Weil ich bin halt 90er, ich komme aus den 90ern. Ich bin 90er-Kid und hatte halt selber einen Sega Mega Drive. So ein Game Gear hatte ich nicht, aber so ein Mega Drive hatte ich.
Gear Micro is a series of.
Das kenne ich gar nicht, Alter. Game Gear Micro.
Ridiculous 1.15-inch tall handhelds with only 4 games each, but costing about $50. The Astro City Mini is sort of the
$50 kostet das.
Tweener here, with 37 games that aren't exactly well known, but still have a solid fan base. Games like Alex Kidd, Dark Edge, Puyo Puyo, Shadow
Alex Kidd wollte ich auch mal haben.
Dancer, and Wonder Boy. It's a solid little toy, something fans would.
Und die Spiele früher, die waren ja so schwer, Alter. Da hast du ja gar nichts geschafft, Alter. Da hast du irgendwie, bist du bis Level 2 gekommen, Level 3 bist gestorben, da durftest du wieder von vorne anfangen.
No doubt, really.
Das waren noch die richtigen Roguelike-Spiele, Alter.
Enjoy, but it's a bit more expensive at $120. Unless you buy it from LRG, in which case it's actually $129.99. Now, what is that extra $9.99 for? Well, the packaging is in English. Also, the games are in English, according to LRG. If you're a big enough fan, you probably realize a lot of those games are Japanese, with only English menus or even completely untranslated. So this.
Da versteht man ja gar nichts, was da abgeht, oder?
$9.99 makes a lot of sense. It allows you to buy the games in English, the first time even for a lot of the games in the group. So you go buy this, and then you see it says localized English packaging for the US market, and only 3,500 units have been manufactured in English packaging for the US market. It says
Packaging.
English, and it's limited.
Aber wie kriegt man denn das Update? Das war doch so ein Kasten,
It's
oder?
going to sell out soon. You need to hurry or you won't get it. So you plunk down your $129.99. Maybe you even buy the $39.99 style kit that lets
Das ist ein Style-Kit, Alter.
you turn it into a piggy bank.
Hä?
That's even more exclusive, only 150 of those.
Ah!
Maybe later, you tell some people about the English games, and they're confused. It doesn't say the games are in English, it says the packaging. So you go to find
Nur die Verpackung ist auf Englisch.
that tweet where LRG confirms the games are in English, and you can't find it. You look and can't find it. Because it's been deleted. That's right, one day before going on sale, LRG deletes the tweet that says the games will be in English. It really is just the box. You're paying $9.99 more for an English printed box. You could literally buy it at Amazon from Sega Toys instead of buying it from Limited Run and get a better price. And the only difference
Und was kostet das bei Amazon?
is that the box wouldn't be in English. There
so.
is a conspiracy about Limited Run, and I explored that
Das ist auch wieder so ein Sammlerding, ne?
conspiracy because frankly
Das packen die Leute halt nicht
it
aus.
sounds entirely possible.
Und andere kaufen es für das Doppelte und die packen es dann aus.
I spent dozens of hours investigating, cross-referencing, looking through financial documents, talking to people, so I think I've got a pretty good idea of what's going on. First, I'll tell you the conspiracy. Limited Run holds back a significant portion of their stock and then sells it themselves on eBay after artificially inflating the price. After all, so many of their games end up on eBay, and it's really hard to imagine that everyone who buys a copy on day one is a scalper. On top of that, games show up on eBay before they're even released by Limited Run.
Ach so, ja. Das ist ja ganz normal, ne? Bevor das Spiel rauskommt, wird das schon auf eBay platziert und gehandelt. Das ist aber bei jedem Spiel so. Das hat nichts mit Limited Run Games zu tun, sondern das ist ein allgemeines Problem von Collectors Editions und von Sammler-Editionen und keine Ahnung. Ja, Collectors Edition und Sammler-Edition heißt ja eigentlich das Gleiche. Aber ihr wisst schon, was ich meine, ne? Also, das ist ganz normal.
There's gotta be something behind it, right? This is a company that profits from FOMO, intentionally making the bare minimum amount of a product so that it sells out in seconds, a process that leaves many real collectors having to buy from eBay at inflated prices if they want to get a copy. This encourages scalping and only harms consumers. The games can sell out in 2 minutes, encouraging bots, and are set during hours that aren't internationally friendly, 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern, and always on a Friday. It's gotta be frustrating to be one of the many gamers who goes to buy one of these Funko Pops, only to miss the sale and then see dozens or hundreds of copies pop up.
Ich wusste auch nicht, dass diese Funko-Figuren, Alter, dass es da einen exklusiven Verkauf gibt. Wusste ich nicht.
On eBay for
Ich habe ja auch ein paar. Ich habe zum Beispiel, was habe ich denn so? Ich habe mal ein Fallout habe ich mal bekommen. Ein Fallout 76 ist das, glaube ich. Ein Funko Pop. Und ich habe die Dead Stranding 2 Stück. Ne? Einmal Sam Porter Bridges und einmal Hicks. Heißt der Hicks?
twice the price. It's not hard to see how seeing this happen so frequently, you might be
Keiner weiß, von was ich überhaupt rede hier.
led to believe
Hicks.
that Limited Run was
Hicks.
itself partaking in the profits. I spent untold hours investigating this. I compiled a list of every current and recent past employee of Limited Run, including
Oha.
close associates. I cross-referenced
Oha.
every sale of every Limited Run game on eBay
Nein.
based on a 100-mile radius of the office location in North Carolina. And I found absolutely no one who worked or was otherwise associated with Limited Run selling any of their games on eBay.
Achso.
Except 2. I then spent quite a lot of
Außer 2.
time looking into these 2 people. One of them
Also diese Editions, die sehen aber gut aus.
works
ne?
for a
Also,
major game developer nearby, and after all of this, I've decided that he's just a fan with too much money who buys without thinking and then ends up with multiple copies. However, the second person, well, they are associated with Limited Run. Very closely, in fact, and it led me down a different path. Let's talk for just a moment about how Limited Run parcels out their limited quantities of games. First, there are order minimums for licensing from Sony and Nintendo. Sony requires you to print 1,000 copies of a PS4 or PS5 game and 1,500 Vita copies. Nintendo
wusste ich
requires
gar
you
nicht.
to order in 2,500 unit allotments. This means that typically the orders
Wusstet ihr das? Also wenn du ein Spiel drucken willst, dass du das dann, dass du eine Mindestmenge drucken musst.
Will be in some multiple of these, 1,000, 2,500, 5,000, etc.
Aber ansonsten macht das ja auch keinen Sinn,
Let's just
oder?
assume a 1,000 unit
Deswegen machen die auch so viel Cash damit.
order, and you can extrapolate out from there. Right off the top, Limited Run is holding, let's say, around 10% for returns and faulty copies. They have a notoriously high failure rate, and eventually they will usually agree to send you a new copy if the first one doesn't arrive in a working order. Then they hold back another 15% for in-person convention booths, pop-up shops, and the like, so 150 copies, and they'll combine this with any returns left over. Then they hold copies for their trusted partners. There are 89 non-Best Buy, GameStop, Fangamer partners. Let's assume each one gets 1 to 2 of each variant. I've seen photos that show, for example, that the partner received all 3 Metal Slug variants and multiple copies of several.
Ist da dieser Aufkleber drauf, Freunde? Ich hoffe, die sind da nicht drauf. Ich hoffe, wenn ich meine bekomme, die sind da nicht drauf, ansonsten rasieren.
Releases. Rounding that, let's just say 15%. We're already down to 600 copies, which they then split into 2 groups for the morning and evening sales. So the first group that sells is going to get 300 copies. They've hinted in their FAQ that the ratio is something like 5 to 1 buyers the product already, but it's actually closer to 16 to 1 once you take out the held copies. Then they ship those copies to their trusted partners. And this is where we circle back, because the person I found was one of those trusted partners.
Ach so.
I started doing some more checking, and the largest and most
Ja, aber davon hat ja Dings nix, oder? Diese Limited Run Games. Ich muss immer wieder nachlesen, weil ich das immer andersrum sage. Limited Game Runs, sag ich da immer. Davon haben die ja nix, oder?
frequent eBay sellers of limited run
Oder arbeiten die zusammen auf eBay?
games are almost, without fail, someone included in the limited run partner program. They ship these copies to their retail partners, and those partners, on average, add $20 per game. And much, much more for the most sought-after collector's edition, sometimes hundreds of dollars more. Limited Run is not exactly free with their policy on partners, but from what I've been able to find after talking to some of them is that there's a loose 2 partners per state policy, so everyone's reasonably spread out, and then those partners are given.
Ja, die Collectors Editions, die sind schon krass. Also von Jurassic Park gab's auch eine oder 2, Alter, ich weiß gar nicht mehr, was da drin war. Dinosaurier, ein Spielzeug oder so.
A first buy.
Aber hab ich gedacht, Alter, was soll ich denn damit? Also, soll ich das graden lassen? Das interessiert doch keine Sau.
Opportunity at the regular going price. They pay the same price we all pay, but they get theirs guaranteed. No lottery, no hoping to get the cart to load, none of the normal stuff we have to go through. This means that Limited Run is limiting stock for legitimate consumers while sloughing off inventory to what are essentially legitimized scalpers. Those partners put the games up on eBay at astronomical prices, scalping you because they are enabled to do so by Limited Run themselves. Then Limited Run has the gall to take their games to physical conventions and sell them there to a frenzy of people thinking that 1,000 copies sold in 5 seconds instead of 300. It's not illegal, it's just scummy. You've heard of Among Us. You know what kind of game it is, and frankly, you're probably all.
Habe ich noch nie gespielt. Freunde, habt ihr schon mal Among Us gespielt? Dann schreibt's in die Kommentare. Ich hab's noch nie gespielt, Alter. Ist auch gar nicht meins. Ich weiß gar nicht, was da geht, Alter. Einer ist der Bösewicht oder so und alle anderen müssen rausfinden, wer das ist, und man muss so ein bisschen
out by now.
Das vertuschen oder so.
It's on Steam, it's on Epic, it's on Google Play, it's on iOS, it's on the Switch, it's on the Game Pass, it's coming to PS5, it's everywhere. Among Us is the world's most
Es gab aber, glaube ich, auch eine PS5 Collectors Edition, ne? Über Amazon.
Popular game of all time. It had 500 million unique monthly players. It's won Best Mobile Game, Best Multiplayer Game. It's a pretty big success. LRG announced a physical collector's edition for Among Us.
Wie kriegen die denn die Lizenz dafür? Das würde mich mal interessieren.
That's confusing to you because Among Us is a game that requires you to play online with others and has updates and things like that, and you can't really update a physical edition. Well, don't worry. LRG has you covered. They're not including a physical version of the game. at all. The $80 collector's edition instead comes with a download code for Steam or Epic. Sure, there's a disc, but that disc has concept art on it. Oh, there's a second disc as well. It has music on it. They couldn't possibly have included a physical version of the game. And why? Well, there's DRM involved. And everyone knows you can't include a video game on a disc if there's DRM. In order to add a little bit of FOMO to this order, they also offered up Among Us exclusive plushies. Only 500 of them for $19.99. So you can put that next to your box
Wie groß ist denn das Ding hier? So?
of physical non-game items while playing your game on Steam. Random point here, but Limited Run Games sent out this tweet not too long ago using their motto, Forever Physical. Perhaps you heard me mention that you could pick up a game at Best Buy as
Forever Physical, wenn du den Download-Code dabei hast.
well. Not just any game, of
Hast
course,
ja
but
nicht, ne?
Limited Run games with unique covers. Yes, with any order that you buy, you might find that your super rare, ultra valuable, soon to be worth a mint game is actually just one of 25,000 copies, which aren't even going to sell out and will slowly be marked down and down until they're bundled with old consoles. This means limited is a bit of a misnomer, but at least it's still somewhat accurate until you take into account that many of LRG's products have lengthy pre-order periods, meaning anyone can buy it and be guaranteed a copy or 1,000.
Man muss aber dazu sagen, niemand ist dazu gezwungen, das Zeug zu kaufen, ne? Das ist immer so, bei jedem Ding, ihr seid nicht gezwungen, das zu kaufen. Es ist zwar ganz toll, dass der darüber berichtet und dass dass er die Wahrheit sagt und so weiter, aber am Ende ist es immer noch derjenige, der es kaufen möchte. Und ob das jetzt ein Scalper ist, also der das Zeug wiederverkauft auf eBay, oder ein Sammler, mein Gott, ne? Aber ein Sammler braucht das nicht auszupacken, Alter. Der kann das digital nochmal kaufen und kann sich das sonst hinstellen.
There's no limits
Oder
on
so.
these sales at all, so you could buy hundreds or thousands of copies. Now you're buying into this limited product that has no limits at all. But at least once they're sold out, you'll have something rare. Except, no, of course not, or I wouldn't have even said such a thing. No, with games like Wonder Boy, Dragon's Trap, and Streets of Rage 4, the publisher just went and printed more physical products and sold them on their own. With the Streets of Rage 4 version, the LRG version was delayed for so long that by the time the LRG version actually shipped to people who had pre-ordered it, another physical edition was already out, and it was cheaper, and it had a better cover. One especially egregious example is the Doom helmet, which was originally limited to just 4,000 helmets. It didn't include a game, just a physical helmet, the essence of what these collector packs really are, just the fluff. And then, after selling out, it showed up on Bethesda's website for sale with an extra 20,000 helmets.
Wie viel? 20.000.
Still available for sale, so you can just go buy one. Well, at least Limited Run won't reprint any of them, except also no. While they've never done any
Naja, die haben halt gesehen, dass das gut läuft, ne? Und dann machen die natürlich damit.
egregious reprinting, they did re-release a previous game on a new console. Oddworld New and Tasty was sold ages ago on PS4, and they recently reissued it, but this time on PS3. Same physical edition, different code in the box. With Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, Limited Run priced their version at $60, only for the publisher to release a different physical edition, which included all of the DLC the Limited Run version didn't have, for $30 a few months later. I'd already recorded that part, but every single time I look, I find something new about this company. I'd said they hadn't just straight up reprinted a product, but then they did. With Hunt Down, the collector's edition was reprinted and resold, an additional 1,800 copies for a second printing. Now, Limited Run immediately went into damage control mode, saying our distribution titles are
Die Sammler würden jetzt sagen, das ist der zweite Druck, Alter, der erste Druck ist viel seltener.
always subject to having further runs, as those games are not directly printed by us. Come on, this is at best a weak excuse. Somehow, it's now acceptable for them to reprint games without making that really clear when you're buying the game. Hunt Down still has the Limited Run logo on the box. It was still sold on the Limited Run website. It was still a Limited Run collector's edition that people lined up to buy, expecting it to be, you know, a limited run. And it wasn't. I'm all for people being able to pick up the game, honestly. I think I stand pretty firmly on the side of if there's enough copies for everyone, that's a benefit for all the people who want to buy one. However, it does stand in pretty stark contradiction to what limited run is supposed to mean. Most importantly, however, it means that these games aren't rare, aren't valuable, and could be reprinted at any time in the future by any number of companies, meaning it's not even an investment. LRG's customer service is apparently trash. Scroll through Trustpilot or the BBB, two websites designed to provide a semi-impartial rating for consumers to know how good a company is at dealing with customers.
Ich kann euch sagen, warum das so lange dauert mit der Herstellung, weil wenn du mit Kreditkarte zahlst, dann kriegst du die Kohle nicht mehr wieder, ne, wenn da irgendwas nicht passt.
And you'll find a whole lot of unanswered.
Na, das wird ja ein Spaß,
There's the normal I did something bad.
Das ist ja noch ein größerer Scam als Kickstarter, ey. Na, hoffentlich geht das mal gut bei mir.
Kind of posts, but a worrying majority of the complaints posted are.
Ich mache aber kein Video, was ist neu in meiner Sammlung, sondern das zeige ich euch erst, wenn es in der Acrylbox drin ist, ne? Wird nicht ausgepackt.
Actually, about the customer service. See, LRG's entire business revolves around you sitting happily on your hands while they take however long they want to send you the product. We're not talking Amazon times here. You're not getting anything tomorrow. The wait time for an LRG release is always months, but sometimes it can be years. LRG has stated many times that they focus on shipping bigger titles, and games with the largest quantities sold, they prioritize their releases. That's fine. In fact, it makes a lot of sense. But it also means that they're selling unfinished products that have no firm timeline, and only after you buy it will they even start to work on the product. And if the game you buy doesn't sell gangbusters, well, they often push lower priority games back quite a lot. There's a game called 5 Dates that was a very small order, and it kept getting pushed back again and again and again, and it looks like some customers waited over a year to get it. And when you get it, well, that's where the second largest group of complaints comes from. See, the shipping is, well, trash. LRG is based in the US, so a huge amount of customers are international. Limited run is notoriously bad for international shipping, just period. The costs, the customs, the shipping times, and the lack of care in the packaging just make international shipping so bad that.
Oh Gott, wenn ich das schon höre, da habe ich schon gar keinen Bock mehr. Ich sage euch jetzt ganz ehrlich, also wenn das hier kaputt
honestly,
ankommt.
It's not worth it even if you are a fan. Domestically though, it's not exactly better. You'll often receive your very limited, super rare.
Oh nein, also wenn die das so versenden, Alter, in so einem Umschlag.
Collectible in a bubble wrapper that's a 1/4 inch thin. If you've ever sent something fragile in the mail, you'll understand immediately how that's not going to do much of anything to protect the game. The games arrive damaged.
Ach du Scheiße.
Very frequently. LRG's response to this was to introduce a box that you have to pay for. Unless, of course, you buy more games, then they'll give it to you for free. They literally nickel and dime you $2 for a box. It's so incredibly scummy. This, of all the things, man, does this make me angry.
Habe ich die Box auch bestellt? Soll ich mal nachgucken? Ich traue mich gar nicht. Warte mal, ich glaube, ich habe die E-Mail noch offen. Moment. Duties and Deliveries. Nee, ich habe, glaube ich, keine extra Box geholt. Aber ich sehe gerade, dass ich sehr viel Geld dafür gezahlt habe. Ist ja aber schon bezahlt, ne? Kohle ist weg.
And I can't help but think that somehow they're charging a profit on the box.
Die Frage ist ja, kann ich das jetzt noch stornieren oder nicht?
Such absolute
Weil für die Kohle, Alter, dann würde ich mal was anderes holen.
Combine this with the fact that LRG won't combine orders unless you buy them all at the same time, obviously an impossibility for a new release, add in the staggered release schedule, and you've got a perfect storm for increasing.
Ich verstehe nicht, warum der Dead Stranding Screen zeigt.
Shipping
was soll
costs
das?
pretty
Hat er keine anderen mehr oder was?
astronomically. But let's say you get your product and maybe it's
Alter, guckt euch das mal an.
damaged in the shipping. Well,
was macht man dann?
well, luckily for you, that's where those complaints come in because LRG does basically nothing for you. Without fail, it seems the customer service representatives will blame you.
Ach so, jetzt verstehe ich auch den Zusammenhang mit diesem Shipping und Dead Stranding.
Deny responsibility and refuse to assist. So you're stuck with the product. Well, it's just a broken case, right? No, because LRG also manages to pretty regularly send out products with significant printing errors. Flint Hook, Kingdom New Lands, Mercenary Kings, and more were shipped out with pretty significant errors for what's supposed to be a best-in-class collectible. To remind you, these are not just off-the-shelf game copies, they are marketed as limited and rare. Mercenary Kings doesn't even have the same ESRB rating on all of its different pieces. Flint Hook's entire back cover is just blank because someone toggled off the words before printing and nobody caught this until it arrived at
Hä? Steht gar nichts drauf auf der Rückseite.
customers' homes. So you complain. Well, there's two problems with that. First, as is depressingly common with these kind of companies, limited run forces you to agree to a mandatory
Also das Video ist schon 2 Jahre alt, vielleicht haben sie sich schon gebessert, aber
arbitration with every sale. You agree when you buy their games to never sue in a court, never join a class action, that you'll speak English, that you'll never disclose what happens, that you'll pay for the arbitration yourself, that you won't get any lawyer's fees returned to you, and that you waive your right to a jury. Mandatory arbitration is shockingly legal and regular, and you will not be able to fight this, unless limited run engages in some sort of fraud that invalidates the arbitration clause. You have no recourse, none, when
Alter, welcher Idiot hat denn das gespielt? Guck mal, der macht da nur Scheiße.
limited run doesn't keep up their end of the bargain. Well, except one. You can issue a chargeback and explain to Visa or Discover or your bank how these guys aren't keeping up with their contract. You bought something, they didn't send what you bought, so you want your money back. If your cardholder agrees, which isn't a guarantee, you did sign a contract, and there's absolutely no cooling off period for online purchases, but if they agree, you'll get your money back. And limited run will ban you from their website forever. They will blacklist you, blacklist your address, blacklist your name. The only way to protect yourself as a customer when limited run doesn't meet their obligations is to take actions that will end your ability to shop with them ever again. How is that customer support? They charge you up front, hold on to your money for upwards of a year, and then finally ship out your item. And when they screw up your shipment, they take months to correct it, or they ban you and refund all of your purchases and just sell it off to some other schmuck. Shantae is a hugely popular way forward series with 5 games that are beloved by their fans. LRG
Mir fällt gerade auf, dass ich vergessen habe, mein Regal hinten anzumachen, Alter. Das machen wir jetzt nochmal schnell. Das habe ich vergessen, Alter. Ich habe das einfach vergessen.
has released these games on Switch, Game Boy Color, and PS4 as a physical release already.
Also hätte ich das Video vorher gesehen, dann hätte ich das nicht bestellt, das Zeug.
And from all accounts, people are pretty happy with those. This led LRG to announce a PS5 version. You can get a regular physical edition of this for $29.99, which includes the physical game and a manual. The digital version sells for $9.99. Or you can buy the collector's edition for $79.99. This collector's edition includes a bunch of random stuff, a manual.
Ja, das ist alles Schrott, ne? Pins, Keychain. Ich kenne das Spiel auch gar
A
nicht.
steelbook, some pins and a keychain, a poster, and an acrylic standee, a little acrylic cutout of Shantae from the game. There will be 5 of these collector's editions, one
Oha! 5 verschiedene Collector's
for
Editions.
each game, and each one will include this little acrylic standee. We know this because there's a statue that LRG has been promoting. We don't know what it will look like, we have no idea what the size is, we don't know anything about it, but we do know that it has
Sneak Peek Time!
5 little slots on its base so that you can plug in your acrylic standee and it will light up. Now, they're selling a collector's box for each of the Shantae games. They've only sold 2 of the games so far, meaning if you want the full set with the acrylic standees, you have to buy now and keep tabs on their site for the next year to get the other 3 games. That's 5 $79.99 collector's editions for a total of $399.95 that includes 5 standees you can only use if you also buy the probably $200 statue at the end of all of it so you can plug them all together. Imagine being the guy who buys the statue but didn't buy or
Das macht doch keiner, oder? Das macht doch
get
keiner.
the collector's edition with the standees. You're going to have a statue that's incomplete forever. Imagine buying a collector's edition for $80 and then being told, hey, this part of the thing you bought is for this other thing if you buy it.
Oh mein
Also
Gott, der zerlegt die richtig.
buy all the rest of them. Hey, and while
Aber wie gesagt, ne, Freunde. Pog. Kennt ihr Pog noch? Pogs? Ich hatte die damals. Das war auch so ein 90er-Ding, Freunde. Da gab's Pogs. Keine Ahnung, was man damit gemacht hat. Es war immer Werbung, musste man irgendwas raufschmeißen und dann haben die sich umgedreht oder so. Nochmal die Erinnerung daran, keiner ist gezwungen, das zu kaufen, ne? Jeder kann herstellen, was er will, wenn er die Lizenz dafür hat und dann Keine Ahnung. Ja?
you're there, pick up the
Vollgas.
$74.99 skateboard deck and
Ja, ich glaube, von Jurassic Park gab es auch ein Skateboard-Deck, also wo ich mich auch gefragt habe, hä?
the trading card set and the hoodie and the stickers and the separately colored steel books and then slipcovers. It's beyond milking. It's frankly pretty gross. There are two other things that just kind of bother me, and I couldn't really figure out where to fit them in, but I wanted to be
War das auch ausverkauft, das Ding?
reasonably comprehensive, and after asking some friends and Brody, the editor,
Okay, hier ist wieder ein neues Spiel.
he agreed that this was bad enough that I couldn't justify not including it. So here's my two issues. I understand if you think they're minor. First, Limited Run actively solicits Twitch subscribers. That's really weird to me. Not only do they allow viewers on the Twitch streams to subscribe at all, something a lot of corporate accounts simply don't enable in the first place, but they actively encourage it as a, quote, way to support the stream as we continue our
Subscribe. Ignore Slow Mode. One Substream per month. Hä? Was soll das?
path to
Also wenn ihr subscribt auf Twitch, dann zahlt ihr dafür Geld.
partner. They provide colored names and roles on their Discord. They even do subscriber-owned
Die haben Discord? Moment. Ich lasse mal weiterlaufen. Ich gehe mal so lange auf
If you're
den
not
Discord.
subscribed, you can't watch the stream, further soliciting payments. It's sort of gross, is it not? For a company that is selling you something to also take your money for free? Their live streams are literally ads. Literally, here's a game we sell that you can buy. Followed by, also, please donate. It just feels gross. Secondly, and I bring this up because it turns out this is a fairly common misunderstanding, but Limited Run artificially inflates the value of their games by artificially lowering the issue number. See, you have Breach and
Es gibt einfach, Freunde, es gibt einfach zu viele Spiele. Es gibt einfach zu viele Spiele, die rausgebracht haben, die ich gerne haben würde. Ich kann hier aber keinen Discord sehen, Alter. Es kann sein, dass es den nicht mehr gibt. Ich finde den nicht. Naja, egal.
clear as number 001, but you also have Cthulhu Saves Christmas as number
Nee, gibt's nicht mehr. Also, ich sehe ihn hier nicht. Newsletter. Ah, hier. Discord-Server. Guck mal, alles klar. Hä? Was stand da? Nochmal. Dieser Einladungslink ist gültig oder ungültig oder abgelaufen. Ja, dann nicht, ne?
001 and also Thimbleweed Park.
Cthulhu. Habt ihr das gerade gesehen? Cthulhu Saves Christmas. Ich muss los.
As number 001 and also Thimbleweed Park as number 001. This is because they cleverly, or perhaps cunningly, or connivingly, restart their numbers every console. New numbers. And so
Ach so.
instead of being number 386, it's number 001. This also feels kind of gross. And I know I said two more things that bother me, but then there
Die haben einfach das Geschäft verstanden, ja. Die wissen, wie man Kohle macht.
were more
Die haben da ein paar Grafiker drin. Die machen diese Cover und den ganzen Scheiß. Da wird
things, and I'm
abgezogen,
confident
ne?
now that no matter how many times I go to revise this video, there's going to be one more thing that comes out.
Das sieht gar nicht so schlecht aus, das Spiel.
It's just all deleted or fairly minor or otherwise gets swept
Aber das gibt's wahrscheinlich auch als digitale
under the
Version.
rug, and no one really puts together how pervasive and downright systemic the amount of weird or abusive or unprofessional Limited Run can be. So here's another couple of things. Now, this is just weird. I wasn't even going to talk about it at all until I had
Warum sind denn da eigentlich keine Untertitel mehr an? Habe ich die ausgeschalten?
to sit down and record
nicht mehr.
more audio to talk about the
Geht nicht mehr. Untertitel Deutsch. Okay.
next thing, but Way Forward, the game publisher, their official Discord presence is the Limited Run Discord. They have their own rooms, they have hoisted roles, they have separate rules for their Discord enclave. Sure, this doesn't really say anything specific about LRG, but it's just so weird how incredibly incestuous these companies can be. Imagine if Insomniac Games had a section inside of Walmart that was a store that only sold Insomniac games, had its own return policy and was staffed by Insomniac employees. It's kind of weird, right? And it
Was? Junge, mach mal Untertitel an, ich verstehe kein Wort. Klicke auf Einstellungen. Beleuchtung wie im Kino. Das verstehe ich auch nicht. Versteht ihr das? Na egal.
obviously serves more to bring customers to Walmart than it does to provide a good experience.
Also Insomniac Games gibt's nur bei Walmart, oder was?
To Insomniac fans. Well, that's here too, and it's just very, very strange. Way forward, guys. I'll make you a Discord if you want. It's free. I run several with tens of thousands of members. You could have it.
Ach so, ich kann nur in den Discord, wenn ich der Twitch Prime-Mitglied Dingsbums bin, oder
in
was?
less than an hour, I promise. In fact, I've already done it, and it's yours, completely free, ready to go. It's identical to your current presence on Limited Run, but completely yours. And I'll teach you how to run it. I'll provide tutoring on the permissions to your admin. I'll give you guys a couple of weeks of support, and I'll help you submit to Discord to become a verified game server. DM me on Twitter. Now, on to the other issue, which is the abusive, unprofessional side, and very much about LRG specifically. This tweet was sent out today as I'm writing this addendum, and I thought for a second that somehow this script had been leaked, right? Like that could be a response to this video. It's not, though. It's a response to something else. Before I go over that, I just want to point out a weird statement here. LRG says they've paid out over $80 million and only take 20%. So that's $20 million or so in 6 years. I don't know about you, but an average $3 million a year in gross profit might not be build a rocket to space kind of money, but it's also not chump change. LRG tried to handwave this by saying that the CEO's salary is commensurate with other employees, but Elon Musk's salary is $0 because salary isn't how CEOs are compensated.
Ja, aber du kannst ja Elon Musk nicht mit dem CEO von Limited Run Games vergleichen. Ja, ich glaube, die sind immer noch so ein bisschen weit auseinander. Ich meine, Elon Musk hat Kohle bis zum Abwinken und der hat jetzt wahrscheinlich auch Geld, aber angefangen hat er auch ganz klein.
Direct stock ownership, annual incentive bonuses, perquisites, colloquially known as perks, like private planes.
Ich verstehe nur nicht, warum keine Untertitel mehr da sind, Alter. Das nervt mich ja tierisch. Ich mach nochmal Englisch an. Guck mal, da sind sie wieder. Nochmal Deutsch. Halt. Nee, ich glaube, wir lassen mal Englisch. Hä? Lass mal Englisch hier, guck mal.
Company travel expense accounts, a shiny golden bathroom, and yes, even severance packages. The golden parachute that means even if you mess up and get fired, you're still going to land on your feet. Literally, none of these are part of your salary, but they represent a huge amount of value that goes directly into the pocket of a CEO over a basic employee. I'm sure Limited Run doesn't have their own fleet of G5s, but that doesn't mean their CEO's total compensation is just a weekly direct deposit. But what was he complaining about? Well, you see, it turns out that Limited Run lied to their customers and pulled a bait and switch. Shiren the Wanderer got a collector's edition on PC, and it comes with an art book, a couple of prints, some dice, a stress ball, and the physical game in a little jewel case. Except no, it doesn't. They lied. See, if you bought the collector's edition of Shiren the Wanderer, you didn't get a nice little jewel case. You got a Steam code. You bought Shiren the Wanderer on physical disc for the PC, and you got a piece of paper with a Steam code on it. Already, this is a pretty big mistake. Over $6,000 worth of purchases were made for this game, and after spending $75 on a physical edition of the game, the core premise of which is probably to preserve the game and not have to download a digital edition, you give your customers a Steam code without so much as an apology. No note that explains the issue, no email, nothing that says you made a mistake and you're working to fix it. Just a Twitter message, if someone happens to find it at all. This is the worst kind of customer support because LRG knows they did something wrong here. They know that they have failed to provide their customers with the product that they bought, and they just don't care. They'll handle it in the ephemeral world of Twitter, where they can delete a reply if they have to. Well, one customer decided to follow up and see how LRG would quote, make it right, and it turns out they'll happily provide a partial refund of $10. Yes, that's right, for giving you this Steam
Rückerstattung bekommen von $10.
code instead of the physical copy you ordered. If you contact support and go through all the hassle of complaining, then and only then will they issue you a $10 refund. No, not every customer automatically gets a $10 refund. No, they won't send an email or explain, but if you're annoyed enough to complain, then they'll offer you $10 back. $65 for a Steam code. I wish I could say it ends there, but Douglas Bogart, the co-owner of Limited
Ja, das ist natürlich Abzocke, ne? Wenn da ein Code drin ist und keine Disk, dann ist das nicht geil.
Run, he wanted to make his opinion pretty clear. Customers shouldn't complain. They don't have the right to complain because LRG is already providing so much content at such an affordable price that to complain is frankly heretical. Imagine subtweeting a customer as the owner of a business, sending out this tweet and snidely insulting your customers for wanting what they paid for. Don't worry though, it's just a tweet, so it can be deleted. Doug, by the way, well, he's something else. Dougie Baby thinks he's a superstar. That's why he sells his autograph to fans at in-person events. It's ridiculous all around and frankly, a disgusting abuse.
Es gibt doch Leute, die unterschreiben auf dem VGA-Game, Alter. Oder lassen da ein Autogramm draufsetzen. Ich habe letztens was gesehen im Internet, total verrückt, wo ich mir gedacht habe, hä? Da kann ich auch meine Putzfrau unterschreiben lassen.
Of your customers, and one of the most unprofessional things I've seen since Twitch put porn on Ninja's channel. Don't worry though, that CEO, he cleared everything up by saying that actually it was all about something else completely unrelated. And as we know, he would never lie to us. A lot of this comes down to why you're collecting this game at all. What drives you to pay for a fake collectible, artificially limited and artificially driven up in price with false rarity? Why would you do this? As many of you know, I sometimes like to delve into the psychology of a thing. I think it helps us understand when we understand ourselves. Collection is actually an instinctive predilection, and there's lots of reasons why you might do it. Knowledge. Perhaps you're collecting because you want to learn or know things. Relaxation. You can find the act itself to be relaxing. There's people who collect something purely for the appreciation of beauty. There's the pride of ownership. You can feel proud to be the one who has this thing. Social interaction. You can interact with other collectors who also like this thing you like, and you can interact with the people behind the item you're collecting, the celebrities or businesses that made it. Competitive challenge, this is one gamers are very aware of, the competitive urge to collect them all. Recognition,
Collect them all.
Others will be awed by your awesome collection. Altruism, a lot of people collect things to donate them to museums.
Ich glaube, ich habe da einen großen Fehler gemacht, dass ich da was gekauft habe. Ich glaube, das war keine gute Entscheidung. Ich weiß ja nicht, was drin ist, weil ich es wahrscheinlich nie aufmachen werde, aber ich hoffe, da ist wirklich eine CD drin.
A desire to bring
Und kein Download-Code, das wäre
order, the want to put everything in its place. Perhaps it's a life goal. It gives you a purpose in life to collect. There's also the nostalgic connection to history, the feeling that you're part of the story. And finally, the diversification of wealth, such as art and jewelry. These are the reasons people collect, though most collectors will be an amalgamation, a combination of these reasons. Historically speaking, someone who collected rare or unique items would have greater wealth because they owned rare things. Similarly, someone who held on to a lot of things would be more likely to succeed in different situations because they had the things they needed readily available. This got passed down. This behavior was cemented as something admirable, and it became a common trait. Today, unfortunately, we are flooded with low-quality garbage, and our lizard brain
und ich habe so viel davon. Soll ich euch sagen, was ich davon alles habe? Das hier habe ich. Das. Cyberpunk Collector's Edition. Wobei, das ist kein Garbage. Das ist gute Qualität. Ne? Hier ist er zu sehen, die Figur. Die Figur gehört hier rein. Das gehört hier rein. Das Ding habe ich auch noch. Frag mich nicht, wo das ist. Das habe ich auch. Da gehört die Box dazu. Ich weiß nicht, ob gleich noch mehr kommt. Das ist der Flammenwerfer von Far Cry 6. Der ist geil.
don't really understand.
Halt, stopp. Hier, das habe ich auch. Das ist die Red Dead Redemption Collectors Box. Keine Collectors Edition, Freunde. Die habe ich original verpackt noch. In einem ganz tollen Case von einer Grading-Firma, die es nicht mehr gibt. Und beim Versand ist es auch noch kaputt gegangen. Super geil, ne?
That it isn't valuable. We don't
Aber ich habe da jetzt nicht so ein. Es ist natürlich ein bisschen eingeknickt. Es ist schade. Die steht da oben. Ich schicke das auch nicht mehr irgendwo hin. Also das Ding bleibt da drin und
understand numbers very well, and our herd size is larger than ever before, so
Das kannst du doch gar nicht verschicken, Alter. Das Ding ist so schwer. Ich habe das richtig gut verpackt und die haben das halt nicht gut verpackt.
how rare something really is or isn't gets muddled and misunderstood. This compulsion to collect can become overwhelming, and for a lot of limited run customers, it's exactly that. They have a compulsion. They need to collect these games. They are essentially video game merchandise hoarders. And if you think you might be, or you know someone
Ich bin einer.
who might be,
Ich bin ein wie hat er das genannt? Merchandise Hoarder.
compulsion. They need to collect these games. They are essentially video game merchandise
Videogame Merchandise Hoarders.
hoarders. And if you think you might be, or you know someone who might be, it's fairly easy to identify. Can you clearly describe why you collect? What drives you to own these things? If you can't describe why you're doing it, it may not be a collection, it may be a hoard. This isn't unique either to humans or limited run games. Pack rats exist. That's not a term that was made up. It's an animal that steals and hoards.
Ich habe mir aber bis jetzt immer nur, ich habe mir eins davon, also ich habe mir dieses eine Spiel habe ich mir vorbestellt. Dieses Jurassic Park, weil ich damit irgendwie so ein bisschen Retro-Feeling verbinde. Ne?
Things in its nest, shells, pieces of glass, shiny plastic, and pretty rocks. Magpies steal jewelry and coins, and other companies have tapped into the fact that we share this foraging part of our brain with animals. Pokemon, G.I. Joe, Cabbage Patch Kids, Beanie Babies, all products that tapped into
Beanie Babies, Alter, die waren auch mal ganz krass unterwegs, Alter. Ende der 90er war das, glaube
the
ich.
meat and chemicals of our brains, and
Das war krass, Alter. Oh, die haben alle diese Viecher gekauft und bei eBay, da gingen die Preise hoch.
made other people rich. You can even see it
Ja, vor 24 Jahren gab es schon Internet, Freunde.
outside of tchotchkes, and it's become semi-regularly referred to as magpie culture. The magpies from earlier lending their name to the idea that we are
Ich meine, schaut euch das Regal da hinten an. Das ist alles voll.
flittery hoarders who can't shake off our primal instincts to collect, gathering the shiniest of toys and then hiding it in a closet where no one can see it. So after all of this, I just don't think that limited run is worth investing your money with. There's a lot of game preservation companies that could be, but this just isn't one of them. Frankly, preservation hasn't even been a goal for limited run games since the Switch released. I originally intended to position this video as a sort of do better, to shame limited run by exposing some shady, scummy things they did, and then encourage them to do a better job, to service their mission statement and to service their customers. But after working on this for several weeks, I've come instead to the conclusion that none of this is a surprise to them. They single-handedly started the relentless limited print model, and I think they're pretty happy with that. It is so easy to find solutions to these problems, and it's not my job to do that, so I
Was ist das? Keine Ahnung.
can't imagine that if it were my job to find solutions, I wouldn't have found them already. Stop charging for boxes for shipping. You're selling collectibles. Treat them that way. Institute a third-party or multiple-step quality control before printing thousands of copies of a game with errors. When you negotiate a timed physical exclusive with a publisher, tell customers what that window is, so they don't get screwed when the publisher releases a different physical edition the day after your own sale has ended. Do some quality control with your partners. Set clear and transparent qualifications for when a game will be released. Will it include DLC or not? Will it require a patch or not? Will it just be a digital download code or not? Additionally, some serious consideration needs to go into how you treat your potentially addicted customers. The ethics of selling a rare game with a rarer version for a premium, plus the whole selling $1 games that were free on PS Plus for $40 thing. In fact, your selection of games overall should be a lot more transparent, or at least customer-focused. Games like Jak 3 already exist in the millions, physical copies no less, so is that really the game that deserves to take up someone's entire expendable income for the month? Why isn't there a lottery? Graphics cards do this, Newegg does this, but Limited Run's idea of a perfect system is one where you have seconds to click and pray. Scalpers are the only people benefiting from this backward system of ordering during preset times of the day. And yet the solution wasn't to combat that, but to ignore it. There's too many variants and you're taking advantage of completionists. There's
Sold out.
Pointless trading cards intended to serve only as an extra hook to drive people to buy more, and yet only the owners will ever have a complete collection. Maybe you're the fraction of a fraction that refuses to buy digital. Okay, so limited run is the only way you can play some of these games without bending your morals to accept the digital future. You should be the most upset about this, because you're the one who gets shafted when a game won't launch without a patch. You're the one who gets spun out of the zeitgeist and can't engage in conversation with the rest of the world because you're 2 years behind everyone. You're the one paying a premium just to get deprioritized. And if you dare to complain, they're going to ban you. To bring it full circle, the guy who Tommy Tallarico was complaining about was Frank Cifaldi, the founder of the Video Game History Foundation. If not for that series of tweets, I never would have started looking into them, and then never would have started noticing a series of very concerning facts about a little old company called Limited Run Games. You can watch another video in the corner, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.
Alright, Freunde, jetzt fühle ich mich ja ein bisschen schlecht, nachdem ich jetzt das Video gesehen habe, dass das wahrscheinlich alles eine Scheiße ist. Aber ich lasse mich mal überraschen, wenn das ankommt. Und ich werde euch auf jeden Fall auf dem Laufenden halten, beziehungsweise folgt mir direkt auf Instagram. Da gibt's immer die neuesten News, Alter. Wir geben natürlich einen Daumen hoch und ich abonniere den Typen auch gleich, weil mir das Video echt gut gefallen hat und ich wieder mal gelernt habe, dass man nicht immer sofort sein Geld irgendwo investieren soll, was es einfach vielleicht gar nicht wert ist, ne? Ich werde es selber sehen, wenn das Zeug ankommt. Und dann gucke ich mal weiter. Ne? Ansonsten muss jeder für sich selber entscheiden, ob er dafür bereit ist, die Kohle auszugeben für diese ganzen seltenen Einzelexemplare. Wie gesagt, also bei eBay könnt ihr gerne mal gucken. Gebt einfach mal ein Limited Run Games und da werdet ihr sehen, wie teuer der Kram noch ist und wie das gehandelt wird. Juti!